Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, I'm really excited to have Fane Thompson with me. We're going to explain this WTO, and we're going to give you some things that you need to be looking at while we're explaining it, because it's going to be very serious while you're looking at law cases and while you're looking at other power companies and all the other, I hate to say distractions, all the other activities. There are things that happen in this country behind the scenes that we sometimes miss. And that's what I want to start pointing out to people. And so we're going to explain what the World Trade Organization is, known as WTO. It's not something that just popped on the scene by accident and we have a few months and we have to sign this thing and we have to join this thing. It's not accidental. This thing's been happening for over a decade. I'd like to say almost 2 decades. And so consecutive people in power have done certain things and have not done certain things. And so this is going to be the single biggest thing that will happen to the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas in the history of this country. Fane Thompson, good morning. You wanna weigh in on this?
Sure. In fact, good morning, Bahamas, and good morning to my friends in the studio, and good morning to all of you. First and foremost, let me say I'm going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. I want to thank Graham for taking the time out to make this platform available to us to discuss this issue. I have been quiet for a long time about some of the things that have been going on in the country. Sometimes when you get caught up in the issues of your own life, you sometimes just step back a bit. But it's time now, clearly, for me to dust off some of that commentary and say some things. Today is an important day for me because I'm about to share some stuff, but I want you guys to be patient. There's some things you're going to understand immediately, and then there's some things feel free to call in and ask about. Let me also say that we repeat our invitation to the Minister. I might as well call him the Minister for Foreign Trade, because that's exactly what he is.
Yes.
Minister Lang.
With all respect.
To come onto the show and respond, or to offer a response to what he's going to hear on the show today. I am inviting the Minister for Foreign Trade, because we have no Minister for Foreign Trade. We just appointed one. His name is Zhivago Lang. And he said some things, and this is why we have to be fair to him, and we repeat our invitation to him to come on the show and speak to these issues, because today is not going to be a very, very nice day. Not in the sense that we're going to be personal about these issues, but in the sense that we're going to directly challenge some of the things that he has said. For example, some comments he may have made yesterday in the Tribune. First, let me begin by explaining what the WTO is. The WTO is the World Trade Organization. It is the organization which polices, manages, controls, supposedly monitors international trade. What is trade? Trade is business. Trade is the business between countries. The Bahamas, Jamaica, the United States, Denmark, Sweden. Trade is about business between countries. That has become part of a World Trade Organization, because in the absence of some kind of structure to monitor and to police and to supervise world trade, countries tend to go to war. So understand that history very, very simply. Before the World Trade Organization, we had an organization named as a General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Now, it's important that you guys remember these things. And if you can, try to bear with me. If you have some questions, feel free to ask. But you need to give me about 20 to 25 minutes to develop this, and then I think you'll get a better picture. What you hear today is going to be very important for you in terms of moving forward and trying to understand what Minister Lang is saying. Listen, he's the Minister for Foreign Trade. Let me just tell you how crafty this whole development with Mr. Lang is. There's no one in the government who speaks directly to the WTO. So what they did 20 years ago almost was to hire persons from the private sector to speak to it, because they recognize that the criticism which would come their way, they didn't want to deal with. So they craftily asked persons from outside the government to speak to this issue. We have now had a second Minister for Foreign Trade, Mr. Lang. The first was Mr. Winder, Raymond Winder. Now, these are both Bahamians who love their country, but they have a way of looking at the country through a certain set of lens, which are important for you to understand, which if you understand, then you'll begin to appreciate what this is all about. Now, first, let me say that countries who want to do the business of trading with each other, they do so on the basis of what I have to sell and you have to buy, you buy, and what you can sell me, I buy from you. That is international trade. The Bahamas operates on the basis that we have essentially 3 things that we trade. One is services. Mainly we have 3 industries: tourism, tourism is one, financial services is the other, technically, and banking is supposedly part of that. So let's just say two general areas of commerce. And that is very important for us to understand. We have very few items, or we have very few industries which engage in the selling of products, goods. So before the WTO came into effect, the only organization that actually used to police and supervise international trade was GATT. GATT, the GATT. Now, when the World Trade came into existence, it also expanded its reach to monitor and to organize supposedly the buying and selling of goods and services. So, for example, for the first time, tourism, financial services, banking became part of the World Trade rules, which they sought all countries to abide by. Now, it is true to say, let me say this very quickly before I begin, that most of the nations on earth are part of the World Trade Organization, to a large extent because of the strength of the Quad countries. Remember this term now that I've used. The Quad countries who have either cajoled or forced or convinced most countries on earth to join the WTO. I have to be very, very honest with you. It does not make sense me sitting in this particular studio and trying to mislead you that somehow most countries have not joined the WTO. They have. But the question is, why did most of them join? And why has it been 20 plus years, really, since really the World Trade Organization came into existence in 1995? Literally, we have gone 25, almost 30 years not being a member of this organization. But suddenly now, there's this pressure for us to join. If you think about it, that's very, very important. And do we have to join? That's another question we'll have to determine as we go ahead. And the final show that we're going to do is going to answer that final question. Do we have to join? But today, we're going to talk about what the World Trade Organization is. So it deals with goods and services. So it means that tourism, financial services, and the industries which we in the Bahamas actually run and operate, they're now subject to WTO rules should we decide to join. Do we have to? There is an economist who I want most of you just to dig up and to read in your spare time. His name is Ha-Joon Chang. H-A-J-O-O-N-C-H-A-N-G. Ha-Joon Chang. You must do some reading now because it helps you to understand exactly what I'm talking about. He's a Korean economist and he talks about the needs and the challenges that developing countries have by joining the WTO. The WTO over the last 25 years has come in for tremendous and vicious criticism for the impact it has had on developing countries. There are two kinds of countries in the World Trade Organization. They're the Quad countries. I'm going to explain who they are. And then there are the LDCs, the lesser or least developing countries. And they, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, include the Bahamas. Who are the Quad countries? The Quad countries are all the Western countries, France, Germany, the United States, and so forth, and also the nation of China. China is a member of the WTO, and these are the Quad countries, the so-called central countries who have established the rules of international trade. Some of those very important rules are one, that you cannot limit the penetration of investment into your economy on any terms which amounts to discrimination against one country as opposed to another, that you cannot favor your people over foreigners. That is to say that your people and foreigners are on the same footing when it comes to investing in the Bahamian economy. So, for example, if a Danish man wants to set up a business in downtown Nassau, he has all rights, privileges, and obligations to do so. It has become so serious by some Bahamians who bought into this idea that the Commercial Enterprises Bill was passed this year to facilitate the ease with which foreign businesses can make investments in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. Now, traditionally, that was not the case. When the PLP came into power in 1967, they came with the concept Bahamianization. And, it's not about the personalities in the PLP that I mentioned that. But one important part of the so-called PLP's emergence was the idea that certain sectors of the Bahamian economy were reserved for Bahamians. Let me repeat that. Certain sections of the Bahamian economy were reserved for Bahamians. Because the thinking then was that the Bahamas' economy was too young to be exposed to the ravages of international competition, and it ought to be protected. So they crafted and they coined the expression known as Bahamianization. Now, some of you who do not know that, please check it out. You will see what Bahamianization is all about. It's about putting Bahamians first, theoretically. That was the point that they sought to make in 1967, more so 1973 when the Bahamas became a sovereign nation. Now, they practiced that Bahamianization for a number of years, but some in the 1980s, coming into the 1990s, the PLP itself made a shift in what I would call a more open direction. That is to say, they decided that having regard for the fact that the Bahamas was competing in a certain milieu, that there was a need then to begin to liberalize or free up certain parts of the Bahamian economy to foreign investors. And that began, I think, in the late 80s. To a large extent, that has happened. Now, this is something you got to understand. At no time were we contemplating the opening up of our economy at the levels where Bahamian businesses had to compete with foreign businesses. So, for example, the retail and the wholesale sector was reserved, even up until that point, essentially for Bahamians. That changed somewhere after 2000, between 2000, let's say, and 2007. And why did that change? Because the new governments that came into play, and really, ladies and gentlemen, as I speak to this morning, please understand, there is no difference in the way in which the FNM and the PLP looks at this question of the WTO and the role it is to play in the Bahamas. Both of them have appointed ministers of foreign trade. Ray Winder is one, and now Mr. Zhivago Lang is the second, to deal with the question of our ascending to membership in the WTO. They are trying to suggest that because the WTO calls itself a rules-based organization, that somehow joining this rules-based organization would protect us against the ravages of opening up our economy to the world and having to compete on the same footing as the United States. Now, the reason why I mentioned Ha-Joon Chang is because Mr. Chang, an excellent economist from Cambridge University, talks about this in his book, Kicking Away the Ladder. He makes a very important point. In his book, Kicking Away the Ladder, he says, and I quote, words to this effect, that the reason why these type arrangements, that is to say these WTO arrangements, are emerging is because essentially politicians are lazy. They only want to be elected because most of them are professional politicians, and they only want the IMF, the IDB, the World Bank, and all institutions like this to dictate to them how economies should run. And that is basically the idea behind how the WTO's rules are manifested, and the appointment of certain persons. Only people who believe in that mindset, the mindset which is that you must open up your economy to foreigners without controls, and I mean without controls, on the same footing as Bahamians. Only persons who believe in that mindset have been appointed to lead the conversation as to where the Bahamas should be in the 21st century. Now that's serious. I'll tell you it's serious because then it begs the question as to where are we going to be? What's going to happen with our children? What's going to happen with our grandchildren? If we open up the economy of the Bahamas, after supposedly having this experiment with majority rule in 1973, and supposedly going through the so-called experience of Bahamianization, where is the country going to be in the year 2050 if we begin to utilize mechanisms and tools and institutions to liberalize and open the economy back up to all and sundry for everyone to come in and compete on the same footing? This is fundamentally, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are listening, the question that we have to decide today. Now I want to make it just a beeline. That introduction was way too long. But I had to give you some history so you can understand how we got where we are. We are the state and the point in time when we are reversing by our membership in the WTO, where we are turning back the hands of time by seeking to do in 2018 what we were not prepared to do when we became a sovereign nation in 1973. Now, I have to say this, and I want to introduce the conversation like this. I'm going to be another 10 or 15 minutes, and then we invite your commentary. We invite the Minister for Foreign Trade, the new Minister for Foreign Trade, Mr. Zhivago Lang, to also respond if he wishes. It is important that you know what the experts are saying. I'm not an expert. I'm a student of the World Trade Organization, but I have been studying for a number of years. Myself, Graham, people like Paul Moss, we've been at this for a number of years, and basically we've been studying this area, and it's very important. So when we speak, we don't speak because we ain't got nothing to do. We speak because basically we want to share with the Bahamian people why we must not do this, and why you must demand from your members of parliament, why you must demand from your prime minister the right to choose as a nation whether or not we should go in the direction of the WTO. Okay, and that's very, 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 very important. I just want to read something, and permit me just to pull it up real quick. I want to read something which is absolutely essential. I've mentioned Mr. Ha-Joon Chang. If you get a chance, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are listening to us today, please do your best to dig up what Ha-Joon Chang is saying about the development of countries in the third world as opposed to the development of the so-called center or quad countries. I've mentioned who the quad countries are and where the third world is. Now, there was an article that was written yesterday, and I was stunned by it. And this is important because the Minister for Foreign Trade, Mr. Zhivago Lang, is now telling us that WTO won't hurt this economy. He said so. Now, Mr. Lang, I love him dearly. I think he's my relative. He has a BA degree in economics. I get that. He also has some training or experience at being the junior minister of state in the Ingram government, responsible for certain areas which I guess would have involved the question as to whether or not we should join some of these institutions. But yesterday, he made these stunning remarks, and these remarks were the remarks which concerned me. It was an article that those of you who are interested can find that was published on Monday, September the 10th, 2018, under the name of Neil Hartnell. We got to give credit to the people who write these excellent articles, and Mr. Hartnell is very, very good.
Head editor.
Yeah, and very, very good in terms of the work that he does. Mr. Lang actually said that, and I quote. I just want to read something for you so you could walk with me. The former cabinet minister, who first submitted the Bahamas' application for full membership back in 2001 under the then Ingram government, also promised that there was no reason to fear that WTO membership would result in increased tax burden for consumers or businesses. Speaking at a press conference to announce his appointment, Mr. Lang said that the need to eliminate or reduce numerous customs duty lines merely meant a shift in where the government obtains its revenues, not an increase. And in response to arguments that the Bahamas should delay accession until it puts its house in order through energy and ease of doing business reforms, Mr. Lang argued that WTO membership would provide a platform to achieve these goals by forcing this nation to modernize its country, its economy. The Bahamas has already submitted its goods and services offer to the WTO Secretariat ahead of the third working paper, a meeting on this nation's accession bid, which is scheduled to take place in Geneva on September the 21st. That's a date that many of you must bear in mind, because the new minister for foreign trade, must be put on his notice. He has no instruction from the Bahamian people unless we know exactly what he's talking about to represent us in any regard, as in terms of liberalizing the Bahamian economy, because we should also know what he's talking about and what he's proposing. Mr. Simonet went on to speak about the delegation and who it would include, etc., 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 and then these are the words. These are the ominous words coming from the new Minister for Trade, Mr. Zhivago Lang. There's no reason to fear WTO accession will cause an increase on the taxation of the public business community. Mr. Lang said, arguing that it would merely cause a shift. The WTO would represent a beneficial change to this extent. I mean, he goes on to actually extol the virtues of the WTO. And ultimately, he makes the point that the WTO will not hurt this economy. Now, were not for the fact that comment is made by Mr. Lang 2 days ago, fine, you'd say he's a new fella in charge, so forth and so forth, but for the fact that he's been around this business now for the past 17 years. What about a comment made by Mr. Brent Simonet recently? And for those of you who have been paying close attention, we've mounted, I think, on our monitor, and you can see it, some words which were shared by Mr. Simonet. Is it possible to...
It's already up.
It's already up? Okay, and basically, what Mr. Simonet says... what does Mr. Simonet say, Graham? Read it for me.
It's right there in the paragraph, but basically, what is being said in our country is that there's no jobs that will be reserved for the Bahamian people, no industry. What does that mean? Well, we saw in the paper the other day, pelagic fishing. That's where they bring the big net and drag it behind the boat and catch all those fish that are passing through the Bahamas. Well, listen, we can't swear that those fish only pass through the Bahamas. Some of them may live here. Some of them may be born here. But when you take a big net and drag it and carry off that type of fishing, and you can put it in YouTube, we'll put up the video, it's on my page, pelagic fishing. It's devastating.
Okay, and that's the point that I wanted to be made.
No taxi shall be reserved.
Yes.
No tourism. If you have a boutique resort in Abaco, I'm talking to you in Bimini and Abaco and Neutra and Exuma. You'll have a foreigner can come and do the same thing you do. Now, that is crazy.
Now, so the question must be then, how do you counteroppose the comment made by the new Minister for Foreign Trade, Mr. Zhivago Lang, and the comments made by Mr. Brent Simonet? Now, this is very, very important, because Mr. Simonet also added in his commentary, in fact, a few years ago, I can give you again the date for the article. Let's be complete in terms of our citation of our authority. On Wednesday, May the 9th of 2018, Mr. Simonet uttered these words, that we believe. Well, no, he went further. He actually said that there will be not challenges. Graham, correct me. Just to make sure we get it. I want to make sure I get it right now. What does that say?
Mr. Simonet added.
Challenges. What's the word? What's the word that he uses? Ah, yes. Mr. Simonet acknowledged that WTO membership will pose both opportunities and challenges, but said that research shows that it was in the Bahamas' medium and long-term interest. Now, I want and I challenge and I invite.
What are the challenges?
I invite the minister responsible for the Commercial Enterprises Bill to lay in the public domain what those challenges will be. But the most important thing about what he said was he says that there are going to be opportunities and challenges. Now, the Junior Minister for Foreign Trade, Mr. Zhivago Lang, has told us that it will not impact the Bahamas. Nothing will change. All is going to be fine. Mr. Simonet alternatively says there are going to be opportunities and challenges. We know that Mr. Lang, the new Minister for Foreign Trade, is obliged to submit a position by September the 21st. We know that the minister who's responsible for this industry or for this area, Mr. Simonet, is concerned about certain challenges. We in the public domain do not know what they are talking about. We are obliged. We have a right to know what they are talking about. Now, many of you may find this topic not as sexy as who's sleeping with who and who's having blah, 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 and all of the other nonsense that we like to carry on sometimes in our lives. Let me tell you why this is so important. Because if those two men cannot agree on the extent to which, or the impact that this will have on our nation, joining the WTO is a nonsense. Continuing the conversation in the darkness and in secret is wrong. And it impacts my children. It impacts Graham's children. It impacts Brother Fox's children. It impacts all of our lives, what's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 to 20 or 30 years. One Bahamian family,
next 100 years,
not one Bahamian family should not have the right to determine how the Bahamas marches into the next 50 years.
Should we have a referendum?
No, I said that, Graham, but just let me finish.
Yeah.
One Bahamian family should not have the right to determine how we do business in the Bahamas after we've come from 1973, where we sought to protect industry for Bahamians, both local and essentially local business and the so-called business community. And now suddenly, within 45 years, we have decided that we can compete on the same level playing field as countries around the world. That does not work. And that's why I also mentioned Professor Hadjun Chang. Because for those of you who want to see what the experts are saying about what politicians are doing in these developing countries, Hadjun Chang is a perfect example. There's a perfect example because they speak to these issues. And when I say experts, I mean experts. I don't mean just being the possessor of a BA degree in economics. And no disrespect to my good friend. But please, show me that the expertise that is needed to take on 700 trade negotiators from the United States, about 300 from Britain, about maybe 200 from France, another 400 maybe from Canada, that we have the wherewithal, and China, they'll send 1,000, that we have the wherewithal to have the conversation with them and to determine that certain areas of the Bahamian economy must be protected. Now, guess what they're going to say about me? They're going to say a number of things about those of us who oppose this position. They will chances are seek to deride us. They will chances are seek to suggest that we are rabble-rousers, they seek that we do not know what we're talking about. But don't send no one with a BA degree in economics to me, please. No disrespect again. Do not send anyone to me with a simple BA degree in economics. I have studied political economy. I understand the difficulties that we're now confronting in determining and trying to determine where we're going to go into the next 50 years. Any decision we make tomorrow, subjecting ourselves to the so-called first, most favored nation status for all nations to come into the Bahamas, is going to have a devastating impact on our economy. We will not be able to protect taxi drivers. We will not be able to protect Mr. Graham Rutherford and his business. We will not be able to protect Mr. Simonet and some of his businesses. But of course, some of us are not interested in the small stuff. They're more interested. They have their eyes on the big stuff. Our economy is going to be liberalized to the extent that nothing will be safe. Now, having said that, let me just finish by finally adding something which is very, very important. Because many of you want to know, well, why is this WTO so important? Why does this WTO seem to generate so much interest in the hearts of many Bahamians? Well, it does because, again, we ask the question, if you open up our economy, does that mean that black people who have really been denied hundreds of years will suddenly now be put back, put it to the back again of the taxi or the back of the bus? Does this mean that we're going to ensure that women will not be subjected to abuse? Does it mean that the trade union movement will be safe? Does that mean that small business will get the assistance it needs from government to compete with the ravages which will come as a result of an economy flung wide open? Are these issues being addressed? Are these conversations being looked into? You see, Mr. Lang keeps talking about no impact. But Mr. Lang, you're not having a public conversation. You're not having a public discourse. You are telling us. You're being very paternalistic. You're being very disrespectful of the Bahamian people to assume that there are not thousands of us who understand the niceties and the intricacies of this conversation. You assume that we're all dummies, sir, by telling us that this will have no impact on us. The former Nobel laureate, Mr. Stiglitz, former Nobel laureate, Nobel Prize laureate, has decried the very standards that the WTO employs. He has done so. Ha-Joon Chang has referred to politicians who go in this direction as being lazy and corrupt. Do not tell me, do not speak to us as if we do not understand this conversation. I challenge you today, Mr. Lang, yet again, to take this conversation to the Bahamian people with respect. Because you know what's going to happen? You're going to put the Prime Minister of the country in a difficult position again. You're going to put him in a position as if somehow the political niceties of this is not something which should be discussed. You're going to announce that somehow we agree to this. We have never agreed to this. There's never been a referendum on this question. So we must now have a referendum on the question as to whether or not we should fling the doors of the Bahamas wide open. We're surviving. We're going along in many ways the best way we can. But there's no need to open this country up in the way in which you contemplate. There are some countries who have decided not to go in this direction. Only those who have been cajoled and forced essentially have done this. And it's very, very, and there are a number of reasons why this is not going to do our country any good. And I just want to open this up and to conclude my thoughts. And then Graham and I are going to invite you guys to comment and to ask questions any way you wish, and we'll do our best to answer you. But this is very important. This is very serious business. This is not about whether or not I like you or you like me. It really is about the future of the Bahamas and where the Bahamas are going to be over the next 50 years. We cannot continue giving the Bahamas away at the altar of free market fundamentalism. It doesn't work. It has never worked. The WTO model has been attacked across the world. Ecuador had to do a number of things to protect its industries. Certain countries have decided, Donald Trump, notwithstanding what you may think of the President of the United States, has stated on many occasions, the WTO does not work. This is the President of the United States. They set the organization up. They set the WTO up. But Mr. Lang is going to tell me, and Mr. Simon is going to tell me, there are simply going to be challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, whose interest do they represent? The new Minister for Foreign Trade is a hireling. One who's been hired to do the bidding of certain forces in our country. I do not know that Mr. Minnis has had the advice that perhaps he ought to have had to determine the big questions to whether or not we can exceed. I understand now why it was so important to increase VAT. Because Mr. Lang needed an increase in VAT to justify the so-called decrease in the customs duties which will come.
And an increase in fees because
Yes.
the Deputy Prime Minister said that certain fees, and we paid attention to the VAT going up 4%, but we didn't really look at the word that was said, fees. What does that mean? Well, if you can't...
Graham, let me finish before you go on.
Yeah, man.
Because what we're going to do is we're going to have a general conversation. Mr. Fox is going to have to tell us how much time we have left.
Be straight.
But there is something that I wanted to really, really read into the public record so that I could share with you finally my final thoughts. I don't want to belay this point, but it's very important. And for those of you who want to know who Mr. Chang is, please look and check him up. He's a very, very gifted gentleman, and he's done a great deal of work in this area. Mr. Joseph Stiglitz, that's another very brilliant man. If you want another opinion about what this is all about, this is not a simple question of just they're kicking away the ladder for the Bahamian people to develop this country. That ladder to success has been made more difficult. Will be made eminently more difficult. Black people will be pushed further back in the scheme of things in this country. White people will be pushed back. White Bahamians will be pushed back.
The poor.
Further back. The poor will be pushed back. Furthermore, much more so in the scheme of things in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The Bahamian business community will have to suffer the indignity of having to compete in reserved industries against foreigners. That's not the contemplation that the founders of our nation had in mind. And somewhere along the way, I think we've lost our way. I will come back with the 10 top reasons after we have a discussion with Graham. The top 10 reasons why joining the WTO for the Bahamas is a devastating and terrible decision. Read the words of Mr. Simonet. Listen to what Mr. Lang, the new foreign minister, has said. Mm-hmm. They do not agree. They do not agree. Mr. Simonet, I suggest you, is being more honest with us. Mr. Simonet is actually saying there will be challenges. We want to know what they are. We want to know what the negotiations involve. We have a right to know. Great.
Would you allow him to come on the show with you?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
So we have an invite for Mr. Lang and,
Absolutely.
And the minister
Absolutely.
to come and explain the challenges.
What are those challenges?
The challenges could be when big business can come to our country, Fane.
Like a Walmart?
Well, let's not talk, because they'll say a Walmart's not coming. No, they're not going to physically come here and put a sign on the building.
Yeah.
But they're going to be here. See, you partner with something that's here
Right,
already.
right.
It's a virtual world.
Yes. Yes.
I don't need to come and build a building. I can come here and I can simply say, I'm going to set up Uber. And I'm going to hire people from poor countries. And I need 100 to 200 Uber drivers. And I'm bringing them here from a country like China or from Venezuela, where I can pay them very little money, because their goal, they have to send money home to support their friends and family. And so what do? I apply for 300 work permits for my Uber drivers. This is a scenario. I'm not saying this is done deal. This is a scenario on what can happen. And I'd like anyone to come and tell me I'm wrong.
In fact, we really, really want the public to respond. There's some
Can
questions you
you
may
imagine?
have.
We're getting tons of questions
Well,
on
fantastic.
social media.
Let's-
We're going to hit all your questions
Yes.
in just a few minutes.
That'd be
We just-
fine.
So put them in and we'll hit you up.
Okay.
We're also going to be accepting calls, which is interesting. But let's just build this case. I apply for 200 applications. I put them on the minister's desk for work permits. Within 2 weeks, if he can't get me those vetted, if he doesn't get to vet those people, they're automatic under the 2018 Enterprise Bill, Commercial Enterprise Bill. Put it in Google and go read it. It's only a page or so. It's
Please
not
read that. Please read that out, ladies and gentlemen. Please.
That is Uncle Tom's best letter ever, in my layman's terms, because it sells out the people. So my 200 applications don't get vetted for my new Uber company that's coming to the Bahamas. So they're automatic. I have my 200 people here from Venezuela, from Asia, from wherever, right? They're here now, and they're willing to work for $10 a day. Because back home, that's $500 in their money. And they'll do what it takes. If they have to sleep in their car, they don't care. And see, when we're not poor. This is the richest country in the world. And that's why we're not used to what's about to happen to us. Because we don't live like we're poor. Believe me, this is the richest country in the world. Check your wallet today. You have $2 Bahamian bills, 2 different ones, and a US. $3 different in your wallet, all same value.
Come on, go
That's
ahead.
not in any other country. I'm just building the case. So my 200 Uber drivers are here, and they start doing transportation. We're in a virtual world. People use their phone. They say, I'm coming to the Bahamas. Pick me up here and take me there. And what just happened to the Bahamian cab driver that Celinda Pinland tried to preserve that industry of transportation? Gone.
Now, we have some questions, I understand. Graham, you want to mention some of them?
Man, we go right back to the...
We have some questions and some comments, and perhaps we'd like for you to, if you have questions, we're going to be here, and the producer will tell us exactly how long we have, but we want you to respond. We'd like your questions, your concerns, and if we can generate some kind of answers some answers for you, then that's fine. I understand that 1 or 2 forums are about to be planned for this, and we have to put as much pressure as is possible on policymakers to ensure that the Bahamas is protected as we step into this darkness. I'm going to call this darkness.
So, producer, if we could put a number at the bottom, we have a number you can call in, 826-0000. If you want to call from a phone, if you're watching us on Facebook, you can actually just put that on hold and go dial the number 826-40. Neil Davis says, do you think joining the WTO will get rid of the food cartels in Nassau who have exclusive rights to bring the food in and the goods and food and goods into the country? We all know the name of the people, blah, blah, blah.
It's also
held it hostage for years.
It's-
They actually have a chance to get bigger.
Yeah. Well, the Bahamian economy must be protected for Bahamians. I am not if you want to say that I'm protectionist, that's what I am. To the extent that Bahamian businesses are dealt with, have an opportunity to
certain
sell their products,
industries.
then they must be protected. I agree that cartels and monopolies ought not to be encouraged. That's a different conversation. I think what that caller may be doing is conflating the two.
Right. Bradford Roker says referendum. He agrees with you. We all agree. Referendum on oil, drilling, referendum on this WTO. We need about 5 referendums. Don't put them all in one lick, because then you confuse us. You understand? Let's have individual ones and be very clear on the one question. Don't put 9 questions and we really the one to confuse us. We've done that on referendums before. Hasn't worked out for prime ministers. You agree?
Absolutely. Like the reason why the referendum is so important is because the actual WTO membership is actually going to impact our sovereignty. It's going to impact the way in which we make sovereign decisions in our parliament. I do not know how those decisions can be made by an unelected technocrat who's being paid for by the government, and we do not have the final say as regards whether or not we go in that direction. I think a referendum is a must.
Someone said focus on university, healthcare, and infrastructure. Listen, 22 is going to be a different looking Bahamas. Can someone please tell me why they're doing this, right? If this is so detrimental to our country. That's probably the best question.
Yeah,
they're going to tell you it's not. It's going to help you because you could partner with foreigners and you could grow your business and have more opportunities. Well, look, let's look at that. I want you to answer that too. But what if a foreigner comes here and decides not to partner with me? What if he comes and decides to open up a boutique resort?
They don't have to partner with us anymore as a result of the Commercial Enterprises Bill. And as a result of joining the WTO, there will be no obligation for them to partner with us.
And that's Monique Taylor. That's a question. That's a very good question.
Well, Monique, that's
why would they do it to us if it's not going to benefit us, Fane?
Well, why would they do it to us? Basically, if you buy into an idea that the way in which you expand your economy is to open it up and to liberalize it, hopefully then the so-called trickle-down effect, effect will cause development. That has not worked. Brent Simonet is a firm believer in that. He actually spoke to that.
Yep.
And he actually spoke to that in the same speech where he mentioned issues about opportunities and challenges. Trickle-down economics has been practiced now by both governments for the past umpteen years. There's nothing creative in that.
What is that concept? That's I'm eating some stuff here and look, some crumbs will come
fall
off
from the table
and fall for you.
So Monique, your
crumbs?
short answer.
How do we get trickle up where we own some stuff?
So Monique, our short answer is that this very model of development will never inure to the benefit of the Bahamian people. It will not work.
But why would they do it if it's not going to benefit us? Realize who's us.
And realize
it's going to benefit a few.
And realize now who they answer to. Remember now, our political directorate to a large extent is obliged to respond to the demands and the demands of the International Monetary Fund, organizations like the IDB, and organizations like the World Bank. And what do these banks and the organizations say? If you're going to come to us asking for economic assistance and asking for certain loans, then you must apply these set of policies. One of those policy initiatives is that you must liberalize the economy. You can't have any restrictions on foreign investment into your economy. You must liberalize, and to the point where the country has no borders anymore in terms of protecting the Bahamian people or protecting Bahamian industry. That is where that comes from. And the truth of the matter is that has been practiced by both the PLP and the FNM for eons.
So if you borrow, first you borrow and then you owe and you have to pay, and that's deadly.
Yes.
This guy's answering you, Bradford. He's saying, who's agitating for this? Number one. Number two, do they want our fish and our water resources?
There has to be some agenda, some long-term agenda. We just do not know.
We don't just have fish and water.
Yes.
We have a ton of natural resources.
Yes.
How will this affect your natural resources, our natural resources? Are they going to have open? See, you heard it the other day. You can get possibly an aragonite license for mining for $2.5 million, right? Well, what Bahamian got $2.5 million to get a aragonite license? But how many foreigners have $2.5 million to start mining aragonite? And you can't hold them back because you've opened the borders to do whatever they want. No industry is protected. Not your aragonite, not natural resources, not banking, nothing. And so what does that mean? That means someone comes and grabs what they need to grab. We're just setting up the iPad so Mr. Thompson can see some of the comments. German, Japan, US, etc. These texts are hard to read sometimes. Developed under protectionist policies. Let us not be stupid when we build up our economy. Then we can join hands with the big boys. So that person's saying, don't get big before you start selling out.
And for those of us who seem to be so interested in and you know, they say that if you want to generate interest in a topic, put it in a book or write an article, and Bahamians will most assuredly ignore it. If that is what we are going to continue doing about this country, we might as well decide to give it away. This is too serious for you guys out there to think that, for example, it's less serious than, you know, the way we love to go after Haitians and the way in which we do some other things. This is something that is as important as any issue which impacts the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. It will affect you in very short order, if not now, and it will affect your children most definitely if we go in the direction of liberalizing this economy. Now, there are ways of perhaps protecting it against complete and total exposure. Mr. Lang, the new Minister for Foreign Affairs, you must speak to that. Because if you are saying that what your work is all about is about developing, because what you will do, Mr. Lang, will affect this country for the next 50 to perhaps 100 years. 50 to perhaps in the next 100 years.
It's going to affect it indefinitely.
It's going to impact this country, and I am concerned. I am concerned about the people who you have around you to represent you in terms of going into a room with 700 American trade lawyers who are sitting down determining how your accession should be agreed to. Remember now, all nations in the WTO must agree to our final accession. All. It must be a unanimous decision. Now, the curious thing about this is that we have some room. Trump does not like the WTO. He wants to end it. I want you people to understand this. The President of the United States has left NAFTA, another version of the WTO, and he's also threatening to abandon WTO. And NAFTA, but we are headlong trying to get into the WTO.
NAFTA was Mexico, Canada, and the U.S., but it wasn't fair. It was not fair.
As far as he was concerned, it wasn't fair to the United States.
Well, okay, so if you don't like Trump, right? Here's that crazy racist guy saying
it's not about Trump.
But I'm saying this is no good.
Yeah.
But if you do like Trump, here's that smart businessman saying this is no good. So whether you like Trump or not doesn't matter. He's saying it's no good
for the United States.
For the U.S. is taking their jobs.
That's right.
It's taking everything from them.
Right. That's what he's saying.
Because open borders, that means somebody can come from Russia. You know the big problem with Russia and Trump, allegedly. They can come in there and do whatever they need. They can come in there and get your data. They can come in there and do whatever they need. Anything you can do, they can do.
Yes.
You want a country where anyone in the world can come here. And we've not focused on A average. We're bragging about D average as a pass in school. Yeah. So if we're bragging about D average and people are coming here with A average, but they're willing to work for $5 a day and compete with anything you can do. You could do a taxi, you could do bone fishing, you could do a lodge, you could do anything you could do, they can come and do. How's that going to leave? Where's that going to leave you? But you can call us, 826, all zeros.
There's some more comments, I understand.
There you go. We're too small for WTO. This is giving me a headache, Monique Taylor says. Monique, if you think you have a headache now, you will not be able to afford that Tylenol.
Yes.
That's where you're going to end up. So I don't know how you're going to fix that headache, because you ain't gonna be able to afford the Tylenol when this is finished. And it's not a scare tactic. You can go to your minister right now and ask him to come in the studio, and we be respectful as always, and we want to ask some questions.
Of course.
Because we know the average Bahamian sometimes can't ask a question because of what happens.
Victimization. Be sure the Minister for Foreign Trade, Mr. Lang, does not practice that.
So Monique Taylor says she's glad we started this to inform the Bahamian people. We're going to be informing you a lot of stuff that you don't see in the regular media and news, because a lot of people just want to distract you with important things. We know that court case with Mr. Sands is important. We can get to that. But what's happening that you're not watching instead of watching that court case? This right here. This is going to happen by Christmas of 2019, according to the minister. Can't protect you no more. These are things that have been said. So if you can't protect me in the cab business, me in the tourism business, can you imagine a small boutique resort in Andros? TMO, when it was there. You got 10 rooms, you got 20 rooms, and you have someone big, like the Hilton Corporation, come and say, you know what? We're going to build 10 boutique resorts in Andros. And we can put them for $25 a night. You just got outspent. So what do you have to do? Close your boutique place because they got stainless and granite and all the best. And then they come and put some bone fishing boats. And they say, guess what? Prescott, you need to weigh in on this. Because now they got the bone fishing boat. And if you take the package, we're doing $25 a night on the hotel and another $25 for the bone fishing boat. Oh, and we brought in the best bone fishing guide we found in America. He now has exclusive. He can come to the Bahamas, get vetted, right? Because he's an expert in bone fishing. You may not have an expert with his credentials. 50 years in the business in America. We ain't done that. And you can put anything on that application. And now you have for $50 a day, you got someone staying in a better resort, and you got somebody getting the bone fishing experience. You want $600 a day? It's only 25. What happens for that first year? You get outspent. You can't compete. You close. And that person then at the end of the year, right, can put their rates up to $600 a night for the room and $600 for the bone fishing. You have a choice. You could go work for them, but 2 to 1, they're not going to hire you because they can get to bring in an expert, right, from a country, money worth much less, that's willing to work for $5 a day, $10 a day. And you just got outspent. And you take that enterprise bill and you take WTO and bring any of the experts in this room. But I tell you one thing about all these experts we have in the Bahamas, all of them put together, because they've been in charge for the last 45 years or more, but we got $8 billion in debt, and we got to open up all our industries and natural resources to foreigners. Fish, food security. So I don't know if you really want to keep listening to experts, but you could if you wish. That's all on you. Education is the only way out, Charles Roll says. And that's why, possibly, we bragging about D average is a pass. Everybody here needs to have an A average. We need to be on our A game.
Charles is watching from Baltimore. Welcome, Charles, to the show.
Yeah. Charles, it's going to be interesting. If you have a guy that has 300 million people is in charge of a superpower, the U.S., tell you that WTO is no good, and you just a little small developing country. We ain't developing. We're a big country, by the way. We got 100,000 square miles of water and land. That makes us bigger than Cuba, which is the biggest island in the Caribbean, and we're not even in the Caribbean. So look at me as a big country with few people and a lot of resources. That makes you rich, by the way.
Anyway, so if there are any other questions, feel free. I really want to... Graham,
well, Troy Stirrup in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Troy's actually
Harrisburg. He's saying... You're not already in the EPA. What was the EPA? The European Partnership of 08. And who signed that?
I think the same minister was involved.
Same minister.
I think the same minister was involved, and,
Yep.
and the same arguments he was advancing. Oh, it would have no impact on us. Well, the question is, what benefit have we accrued from joining the EPA? What
I
benefits?
can tell you, you've liberalized all utilities.
Well, that's not a benefit. No, that's not a benefit.
we know.
There are no benefits. I see you being sarcastic.
Of course.
Yes.
That was a slippery slope.
There are no benefits with these trade type organizations. It must be a demand that we must put on the new minister for foreign trade, Mr. Zhivago, the unelected Minister for Foreign Trade, Mr. Zhivago, the man who is not subject to the women caprice of the Bahamian people. We must demand that he accounts for what he is doing. Open up your books, sir. Let us know what you are bargaining away. We have a right to know. Now, there's about 10 huge reasons why.
Oh yeah, you were going to give us the 10 reasons. And just before
the
you
top
read
10
those,
reasons,
before
yes.
you read them, share this video, please. Hit bang the share button. Bang the share button, because it's very important that Bahamians know what's going on behind the scenes while they're, I hate to say the word distracting. Don't worry about that court case. That court case will be over with. It's very important. We can address that probably next week when it's coming to conclusion. You need to worry more about who's selling you out
Your
and
children,
your future.
And your children.
And your great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren for the next 200 years.
Yeah. Okay, now, the top 10 reasons, and you can find this on various sites, and we're going to just use it and see how it applies to the Bahamas, but in many, many ways, at least 9 out of the 10 top reasons apply directly to the Bahamas, and very quickly. The first reason, the WTO only serves the interests of multinational corporations and the big, powerful countries. Well, that's a fact. They created the organization. Multinational corporations have lawyers who stand at the ready when anytime they have seminars and so forth to discuss global rules of trade. The multinational companies are always represented. Who's representing us again? The bachelor's degree in economics and 2 or 3 Bahamian faces? Please, give me a break. Secondly, the WTO is a stacked court. The WTO, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who do not know, has what are known as dispute panels. And they seek to rule upon whether or not barriers to trade have been set up preventing multinational companies and different foreign companies from doing business in a particular country. Those dispute panels Those dispute panels, we are saying, are not good for the Bahamas because what they do is they advance the issues of multinational companies over the interests of the people of the Bahamas, and that's not fair from the point of view of ensuring that we get the best possible value for money in terms of the people who come to the country. Thirdly, the WTO tramples over labor and human rights. Well, we know that there's been a move now since 2000 in this country to minimize the rights of labor, to literally ignore the rights of labor, to do everything we can. There was just a recent decision in the Court of Appeal, I think it was, which was very serious. Mr. Obi Bushkin and Mr. Obi Ferguson is now taking the matter, I think, to another court. It shows that there's a trend in governments, so successive governments, to prioritize the interests of business over the interests of labor. There must be some kind of give and take for the two, for them to successfully exist and coincide. WTO rules will allow no labor restrictions, rules, and so forth to prevent the actual doing of business in various developing countries as the rules are presently established. Now, Mr. Lang may say that there are certain reservations he will argue for to protect labor. We want to know, and labor should want to know what those protections are.
There's no union in WTO.
Right.
Remember, all you union leaders, you call Shivargo Lang on his show and ask the one question: where will the union stand once the WTO ascension has fully taken place?
Exactly.
And if he lets you talk about WTO, I'll be interested to hear the outcome of that.
The fourth reason why WTO is so important is because WTO's rules do not allow for any environmental protections to prevent the doing of business in third world or developing countries. The WTO is being used by corporations, one critic says, to dismantle hard-won environmental protections who call these environmental protections barriers to trade. Now, people like Sam, what's her name? The environmentalist. Duncombe. You guys should be out there railing against this WTO because it achieves no useful purpose save and except to advance the issues of foreigners, foreign businesses and foreigners in the country. So, for example, something as simple as a restriction that you not fish in a particular way, long line fishing. Let's say some big company after 2019 gets his contract to come in or strikes a deal to come in and do some kind of long line fishing. Any restriction that we have on that would be considered to be a barrier of trade, which of course we would be forced to remove to facilitate this particular investment by that foreign company. This is a fact, ladies and gentlemen. I kid you not. These things are happening around the world. Please read up on the WTO. The WTO is also killing people. Now, people want to know how is it that the WTO can be killing people. Let me read this. The WTO's fierce defense of intellectual property rights, copyrights, and trademarks comes at the expense of health and human lives. The organization's support for pharmaceutical companies against governments seeking to protect their people's health has had serious implications for places like sub-Saharan Africa, where 80% of the world's new AIDS cases are found. The United States government, on behalf of U.S. drug companies, is trying to block developing countries access to less expensive generic life-saving drugs because it's so profitable and because of the powerful lobby of the pharmaceutical companies. So the WTO is not entirely good for developing nations, especially those who have to deal with various health issues, for example, some countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Another reason why the WTO is so dangerous is because it is fundamentally undemocratic. Any particular law which emanates from Parliament, which seeks to act as a barrier or a restriction on trade for some of these companies and foreign governments, will be considered a barrier to trade. That barrier to trade then will have to fall away to the extent that it actually protects the Bahamian people. It will have to fall away if it is deemed to be and ruled upon as being a barrier to trade. Now, these are the things that you must bear in mind. Our Parliament is under threat with this particular WTO. The extent to which parliamentarians can protect our interests is under threat. That is a very important point. The WTO's most favored nation status provisions also require that all WTO member countries treat each other equally and to treat all corporations from these countries equally regardless of their track record. So a company that's been abusing the American people can come into the Bahamas and not have to concern itself with its terrible track record. Because
wait. A company in the U.S.
Yes.
A company in the U.S. that disrespects minorities
or, for example,
in the U.S.
or
pays poor wages
or anything abusive of its working people and the environment. Yes.
can come here and just do it.
And just do it. And any attempt to restrict them because of their history
Right.
or to put legislation in place to protect the Bahamian people will be considered a barrier to trade and therefore in violation of the most favored nation provisions of the WTO. You see, your new Minister for
That
Foreign
most
Trade...
favored nations, you have to break that down because a lot of people, this may seem a little bit technical,
Yeah.
boring.
Yes.
So I want to try and make this exciting as can be.
Let's do it.
But there's those things
Let's do it.
that are boring
Okay. Let's do
that
it.
people sneak on us, and then we look and say, wait a minute,
Well, what
I
does that
can't go and fish my own waters?
You can fish in your own waters, but you can't restrict who's fishing in the waters beside you.
Oh no,
So
watch this.
You can't do that.
Watch this.
Not anymore.
In England and France
Now,
today,
Graham, let's stay focused on just finishing these thoughts.
finish those points, and then we're going to talk
Yeah,
about
and then we
how
can-
you can't fish your own water.
Yes, that's important. But listen, so Graham wanted me to explain what MFN means.
Yes,
For
most
those of you
favored
who do
nation.
not know what MFN means, please listen. Most favored nation is a rule which is to be applied in the WTO, which requires that if a company from a foreign country comes into the Bahamas, it must be given the same level of treatment as you give, for example, a Bahamian or a local Bahamian business house. No difference. No different. In other words, you must treat all corporations from these countries equally, regardless of their track record. So if they have a terrible record in another country for environmental violations, you cannot use that as the basis upon which you refuse them access into the Bahamian economy. Did you hear what I said, Minister responsible for foreign trade, Mr. Chavago Lang?
You can't
you cannot refuse them. Now, Mr. Lang may come back at us by saying, "Oh, but we can impose this regulation, this restriction." The very restrictions about which he speaks, he cannot impose.
And that's the biggest
He
thing that
cannot
I've
impose.
heard about this. That they say that we can protect this for you. Tourism or hotel bed making jobs or busboy or fishing or transportation cab drivers. You say you could protect these things, right? But then when we ask you what favored nation status is, it says you can't.
No, you can't. You can't.
So it's like the two guys that
fundamental
can't
rule.
agree right now.
Exactly.
You know the two guys?
Yes.
Mr. Lang, the other guy?
Or Mr. Lang and Mr. Simonet.
Simonet can't agree.
No.
And obviously what
Well,
you're saying
Mr.
is
Simonet
a conflict.
I think Mr. Simonet is being a bit more
He
accurate.
is being more honest.
He's
He
being
said
more
there's
accurate.
going to be some problems.
Some challenges. He said that. Now, we must ask the question, what are those challenges?
Come sit in and let's talk about the
Mr. Lang,
challenges.
Minister for Foreign Trade. Yes, I'm going to tease you, Javago. I'm going to tease you because you are now the minister, the unelected, uncontrolled, unsupervised Minister for Foreign Trade. We need to know what you're doing, not just the cabinet. Any of the
I'm going to calmly and very seriously ask the minister, Mr. Simonet, to come and join us.
on
And
the
I'm
show.
sure he would,
Well,
because
fine.
he likes to get the he gave out his personal email the other day, so I think he's very serious.
Well, he's listening. You trust me.
Yes.
The WTO also undermines national sovereignty. Now, this is going to be important for everyone to understand very, very quickly. In the Bahamas, we have a court system whose charge is to deal with the rights and privileges of Bahamians, business houses, individuals, foreigners, etc., 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 etc.
Wow.
The WTO has essentially, by its supranational court system, replaced the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, replaced the Court of Appeal of the Bahamas, replaced the Privy Council of the Bahamas. Did you hear what I said?
Wait a minute, what?
Yes.
Explain that to me in
Let me do it again.
layman's terms.
Let me do it again.
because-
Let me do it again. In other words, where there's a dispute with the WTO rules apply, the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of the Bahamas, of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, is ousted.
So there's no more Privy Council?
No more Privy Council supervision of the rights. So, for example, if a Bahamian has a...
Wait.
Yes, that's...
Wait a minute.
Yes.
If an Uber-like company comes here and
Yes.
starts doing my taxi job, and I want to complain that is in conflict with me, and it's destroying my little business.
Or for that matter, you may have a big company like Oban come in and pollutes all of Grand Bahama. That
Right.
issue will be dealt with by either...
We can't sue them?
You can, well, we know that's now based upon the model they use. They said it's limited to some $2.5 million in terms of which you can claim.
Remember
But
Antigua?
but if you go to, let's say, a WTO tribunal, you will be obliged to subject yourself to the ruling of the WTO tribunal, and the courts of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas will be ousted. Their jurisdiction will be ousted. Now, if you disagree with me, Mr. Lang, please correct me, sir. Please correct me.
So what you're saying...
Please correct me. Our courts will become
if
useless.
a big hotel group like Hilton comes here, opens up boutique resort in Andros, and puts my little bone fishing lodge out of business, and if a big company comes here and does bone fishing and puts my bone fishing like Prescott out of business, I could sue them. But I have to sue it under WTO?
You will be obliged if that company, if that corporation or company or business comes into the Bahamas under the provisions of WTO to settle all your disputes in what they call their supranational court system, which they employ at WTO level. That's why this is so important. We have to understand that the Bahamian people do not know these things.
And they could rule in their favor
Absolutely.
instead of me.
And
obviously, because they don't have my interest at heart.
And most of the tribunals who sit, they are generally speaking trade lawyers from the United States, Canada, or the Western world.
That's already been set with another place that is one?
Yes.
Barbuda and Antigua.
No. I don't want to. We're going to talk about Barbuda and Antigua because it's the opposite. It's the opposite. You see, Barbuda and Antigua. For those of you who are interested, please check it out. Is proof positive that the protections of the so-called supranational court system, the WTO, does not work for small countries. It does not work because they never got compensation. They won and they didn't get paid.
You won your case and didn't get paid.
The Americans said,
take sanctions.
If the Americans said, put sanctions out against us if we don't refuse to pay you the $200 million we owe you. Now that shows you that that's but an example as to why the system does not work for small countries. Okay, but let's continue. Let me just finish. So I want to finish off real quick. Around the world, there's a growing backlash against the effectiveness or otherwise of the WTO. Since 2001, there have been demonstrations upon demonstrations upon demonstrations against the WTO across the world. I took part in one in 2006 or 2007, Mr. Balmoss, I'll never forget that. 35,000 people turned up in Miami to demonstrate against the expanding power of the WTO and the devastation that it has caused around the world. It is a fact about which there is no dispute. Mr. Lang, I challenge you to disagree with me on this one, that the WTO has not worked. It has not achieved its purposes and its objective. And what it has done is to facilitate bigger countries and big corporations penetrating the developing world with impunity. Case in point, Antigua.
Right.
Okay?
Wow.
Now, let me just go on. Final point, because I know that the producer is being very patient today. What in the Bahamas we need to be asking for then is fair trade, not free trade. We want trade that's going to allow our country to develop. By developing the WTO, we must ensure, for example, that our rights are respected. WTO rules, presently constituted, do not respect the rights of the Bahamas. Notwithstanding the CRNM, what do they call it, the Caribbean Regional Negotiating Machinery, I think, which we are a part of, the Caribbean, the CARICOM machinery.
We're also a part of the African Pacific.
ACP countries,
Yes. And the EPA led to, remember CSME was going to be free movement, then they did EPA because we fought that. Then they did EPA, which was the APC,
so we're back at it again with
African, Caribbean, Pacific, and that was free movement of people. And then we fought that. The EPA, I spoke to this European Partnership Agreement of 08 from 08 to now, 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. And so now they said, just scrub all of that. We just go and pass the enterprise bill, bam, everybody can come.
If you believe that the EPA was bad, Graham, this is the EPA on steroids. The WTO is the EPA, ladies and gentlemen, on steroids. And again, for those of you who have not followed up on this, you must. Do not believe that when I tell you that this is serious, that this is a joke. Please do not believe that this is not serious. What happens over the next few months, few years in this country, led by Mr. Zhivago Lang, is going to have a tremendously negative impact on the future of your children. Take that from me.
We'll be doing a show in 2023.
I will not be doing any more shows because I'm getting frustrated.
And we'll be doing a show saying it's reached.
Yes, or this is the effect of it. This will change the face of the country, and it will send us back to the dark ages.
Everybody will be crying about it.
It will send us back,
and it'll be too late.
Now the tide is turning. Finally, the tide is turning against the so-called idea of
open borders
and so forth. So, and we must become
unfair trade. I don't call it free. It's unfair trade.
Trade. We all believe in free trade. We all believe in business and trade.
Did you finish your 10 point?
Almost finished. Yeah. One final one.
Yeah.
We believe in fair trade. That is to say that people have a right to make a living and to protect and secure their children. Oh yes, finally. For those of you who want to please with me, open up your Constitution to Article 52 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. It is that article which empowers the Parliament of the Bahamas to create laws. It says that Parliament shall be responsible for the peace, order, and good governance of the country in the name of the Bahamian people. The preamble to the Constitution says that. Mm-hmm. It is unconstitutional, in my humble right, for the Bahamas to sign on to any agreement which facilitates injurious harm to Bahamians, either individually or their businesses. I submit to you, this is my case that I submit to the Bahamian people, finally as I close, that this WTO is the devil from the pits of hell. It is WTA, so it is EPA, it is CSME, it is NAFTA on steroids. We will not be able to compete, notwithstanding all the so-called nice words which come from the new Minister for Foreign Trade. We will not be able to protect ourselves against the ravages of most favored nation status. Reject it. Demand a referendum. Call your MP. Say to the MP, let's stop it. Let's stop it, and let's stop it right away. It's been great. Thank you, Graham. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me.
You know, Fane, let me explain. Let me bring this down to the fishermen.
Sure.
If you pull up and producer, you can do this. You can pull up the manifesto, rfnm.org, and we'll put it on screen for you guys to see it. And while he's doing that, it says under fisheries to put a GPS tracking device on all boats. To put a GPS tracking device on all boats that want to fish the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Now, to stop illegal and unreported fishing, poaching. Well, listen, if I'm from Spanish Wells, Andros, or Long Island, and I have a license to fish now, I'm not illegally fishing, am I?
No,
Go to Manifesto, go down to agriculture and fisheries. And if I'm to put a GPS tracking device on my boat, what is the purpose? Well, let me explain. I said this 2017 when I first read this. Go down. It's in red at the bottom. And I said that if you're going to put a tracking device on all boats, it's in red there, third item. I said, here's the problem with that. The illegal boat from Dominican Republic doesn't have a GPS tracking device on it. But what if, with Enterprise Bill, I can bring my big boat from Dominican Republic, from Cisco Food in the U.S., I can bring it from Spain, I can bring it from anywhere. My big pelagic fishing vessel with this net of 10,000 feet behind the boat and catch any of them fish. Well, here's the fun part. I can do that. I can bring my boat, and I can bring my 50 workers on the boat because they're expert pelagic fishermen, which Bahamians are not because we've never done it, right? So, 14 days later, those are approved because we don't have any expert pelagic fishermen in the Bahamas. This is what will be said. That boat comes in here and starts working. It will have a GPS tracking device on it. Because if you read the third item, right, which you're seeing right on your screen there, it actually says to put a GPS tracking device. If you could blow it up a bit, we can expand this so you can read it because it's not made up. You can't make this stuff up. It's pretty interesting. Legislate policy, right, to mandate, and I'm looking, the installation of GPS tracking devices on all boats granted fishing licenses in order, right there, in order to eliminate the third item down, this second item, that's fine, to eliminate illegal and unreported and unregulated fishing in the Bahamas waters. What does this mean? Well, if you have a Spanish Wells boat or Andros or Long Island, your boat is licensed. And if the foreign guy comes with his boat from Spain, Dominican Republic, or Cisco Foods out of the U.S., his boat is licensed. You all will now have GPS tracking, or we're going to have the Defense Force come get you. We're not doing our best at this now, but we will in the future. Because remember, it comes to food security, Fane. And so now I have my boat coming from the States. Someone has theirs coming from Spain and Dominican Republic. Because we have big countries that need a lot of food. We need fish. Bahamas only has a couple 100,000 people, and we have plenty of fish. We can't feed the world. We'll have no fish left. But those vessels can come, and they can get their staff on the boat to be licensed, to be work permitted, because they're experts, and we're not. They can say, you don't know pelagic fishing, you haven't done it for 100 years yet, whatever the criteria is. And your boat can be fishing the waters too for crawfish and fish. But there's one thing. The business license to catch fish in the Bahamas just went to $1 million. Andros, Long Island, and Spanish Wells may not have the $1 million fishing license. You understand? So what just happened? Leave your boat parked, please. Because if your boat leaves the dock, you're now you're unregulated. You got your license. You're not. You're fishing. You're in breach of your fishing license. You didn't pay the $1 million, so now you are unregulated. You're unlicensed, and we're coming after you. You understand? Mm-hmm. So a Bahamian boat will be parked while a foreign boat will legally be in the country fishing. That's how dangerous Enterprise Bill is and WTO. Because you cannot, it's a global village. These waters belong to everybody equally. You can't...
You mean based upon this new dispensation?
Yes. You can't hinder
present
business. It's not today. Today, it's only Bahamians can fish these waters. Well, it's by law, right? But everybody's doing what they wish, it appears. But it gets worse if you don't stop that Enterprise Bill that's already done. So you can't stop it. So I could apply, Fane, right now to bring in 50 fishermen for pelagic fishing with 10 years experience.
We just brought in 50 Indians to do a particular project at the Bahamas Power and Light.
This is what we're talking about.
The president of the union said, and I quote, they are here to do work that Bahamians can do. So I mean,
Bahamians can do.
Can do. He said that. He made the point. Yeah,
I was the union leader.
Yes, Paul Maynard.
Well, hello, Paul. Attention, Paul. There's no more union once we sign World Trade Organization,
and there can be no restrictions on that. Can act as a barrier to trade.
I can bring in professionals from Panama that will be willing to work for $10 a day.
I know. So, how, in terms of some of the questions, are we getting any more concerns? Any more comments?
Here they are. Odaz is watching. Hey, Odaz. Good show, guys, from Cooper.
Cherise Cooper.
Well, they're talking about banking. The conversations going on around it. This country too small to handle a flock of people. We continue to go down this
road.
Yeah,
I guess this road, yeah.
Awesome job teaching the message. And that's what I want to start doing. We have a lot of methods and things we can be listening to that distract us and let us cry. But this year is going to be a little different.
Cherise Cooper makes the point, yes, there's a growing international backlash against the WTO
globally.
And the process of global corporate globalization. And again, for those of you who are listening and paid very, very, and making some very, very astute points, please pick up your phone and barrage the telephone for that new Minister for Trade of Industry, Foreign Trade. I mean, clearly, Mr. He must know. He has no authorization to represent you in terms of liberalizing this economy to anyone. Because he has not been elected, and we have never given him permission to speak on our behalf. And the same applies to Mr. Simonet. Respectfully, he's the minister. Give him his space. I'm being a bit sarcastic with Mr. Lang. But Mr. Lang must know this is not going to be an easy ride. You're not just going to give away the country, and some of us are going to sit by and say nothing. Davis, go back and we have.
Here. This country is small.
People are free to have their own opinions. The WTO is the
backlash.
Yeah.
This one here, especially broken promises WTO members.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, sweetie. Yeah, someone actually most favored deals with most favored nations. Yes, exactly.
They Google it. Hit the bottom.
So people are listening, and we appreciate that. And you're doing your research. Listen, we are not the experts in the room, and we do not wish to be the experts in the country. But I am going to tell you, my good friend Mr. Lang is no more expert than any of you out there today. He is not, and I don't wish to do this in his.
Cherise Cooper says Lang can't, not on her behalf.
Cannot on my behalf. I guess
she's saying just he can't do this on her behalf because how do we send just 2 people?
Yes.
To negotiate for 300,000 people? What are their credentials?
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Mm-hmm. What have they run successfully?
And WTO, each country has a group, has a delegation. The American delegation is 700 lawyers, 700 trade lawyers, accountants, and experts in the area. The British have a group of about 200 or 300. I understand that we rely upon the Caribbean regional negotiating machinery, which means we have no one. So when these big meetings take place in Zurich, Switzerland, and around the world to thrash out WTO rules, we are not even in the room. Mr. Lang, please deny that for us, sir. You say you're capable of negotiating on our behalf. What do you have at your disposal? Do you have a trade union leader working with you? Do you have, for example, Mr. Maurice Glinton who's with you?
There's no union in WTO, so he doesn't need to take them.
Who could deal with perhaps the
They're under the bus.
Yeah, who could deal with the constitutional issues? Do you have businessmen like Mr. Graham Rutherford? Do you have businessmen like maybe
Rupert Roberts?
Rupert
Anybody
Roberts,
who's run a successful business.
who can sit in the room and speak sensibly about the protections that
We
this
have
nation
people
needs.
that love this country,
Do-
like
do we-
Bill
do we-
Gates, you know.
Please do not just
You have
accept.
a billionaire like
do-
Bill Gates, and
do
you
not-
don't even ask him to sit
not-
in on these, so
do
he
not
could
believe that
advise you
because
that doesn't make sense.
Do not believe that because you are a former minister that gives you any greater understanding of these principles as opposed to anyone else.
Mr.
We
Lang.
respect your passion, sir, but you are obliged to make yourself accountable.
The irony is, Mr. Lang wrote a book, Who Thief My Conch? Who Stole My Conch? And right now, it's coming full circle, which you just saw, Who Stole My Fish and Conch?
I hear you, but I got to read the book again. I've never read the book.
It's an interesting book. It speaks to this.
Mr. Producer, how much time you have left? Because I know you had in mind how long you're going to be here.
Well, we can always have a continuation tomorrow. You know, we can.
Give another 10 minutes, okay? 15 minutes, another 15 minutes, okay?
If anyone would like to call 826-0000, we can handle that if you wish. Moving on in the show, as we grow, we're going to actually be taking. You can come in FaceTime. You can come in on Skype. You can come in on Instagram. You can come in on. We're using the whole social media aspect. Shows could be a little different, guys, and we're just now in the beginning of the show. Within the week, this thing's going to be a lot different from what you're seeing now. Much better. It's going to be interactive, where you can actually say what you need to say. Let's take a call. John Wells, we're live on the show.
Watch my mouth.
Okay, with the WTO, where someone can come here and take over the taxi job, what do you feel about that?
Let me tell you something, Graham. I'm going to tell you and Mr. Thompson something, okay?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
You're loud and clear. You're live.
All right. I got up out of my bed this morning,
Yes?
and I had an appointment to see the Minister of Transport. You know what his response to me was this morning?
What were you going to see him about?
I had an appointment to see him about getting my own taxi plate after spending $300,000 leasing a taxi plate from the dead F&M man.
Okay.
Okay? I went there. He says he can't see me today. I left there, sick, coming down with the flu. I had to stop by a friend, got $10, put $5 in my tank and $5 in antibiotics to get to his office for him to tell me he cannot see me. They do not care about people. The only agenda the F&M is pushing is to protect the wealthy people of the Bahamas. And the F&M already eradicated the middle class, so the only ones left for them to eradicate is the poor people, and I'm one of them. And I'm catching eternal hell in this country. But rest assured, I have 2 passports in my pocket. I am going to take this story to the Americas, and I'm going to tell everybody, stay away from the Bahamas, because if you come to the Bahamas, you will get shot. If you take a taxi, you will get robbed. And if you ride a jet ski, you will be raped. And I have documentation to support all of that. You know what people tell me? Oh, don't do that because you're going to hurt the country. But while I cannot feed my 2 children as a single parent, cannot even buy breakfast, you think I'm worried about this friggin' country?
And with WTO, you know what's going to happen, eh?
It's going to get worse.
So what, you know what we need to do before when we wrap up the show? We're going to tell you exactly what you need to do to prevent it, because governments all listen to numbers. If you were to see 1,000 people in every constituency go by the minister at his constituency office and ask for an appointment and tell them, because they won't see you, right? Tell them that you want to see them concerning the WTO. That's all you got to do, and then leave. And they see those numbers of people concerned about this WTO, believe me, you'll see town hall meetings, you'll see them standing on their head having all kind of stuff, and they'll probably come on this show to explain to you what exactly it means.
Graham,
Yeah. So we got to wrap up, John. What's up?
you know the documents I showed you, bro.
I want to
There's
do...
a man in the Department of Inland Revenue Services leasing out taxi plates. I have documentation on 2, but it's a known fact that his father had taxi plates in Nassau, Grand Bahama, and Exuma, and not only taxi plates, bus plates, and SD plates.
Well, can we
And
agree...
the people in Eleuthera, people in Eleuthera cannot get paid for busing the children to school.
So,
But this SOB is making
Well-
$300,000
well-
off of taxi plates.
can we agree to do a show on transportation and how the WTO will affect that? I'll give you a call and we can do a whole show on this World Trade Organization and how it's going to affect your industry, because it ain't protected, by the way. But I mean, you in your position, it don't really matter because you ain't getting the plate while others have hundreds of plates. I understand.
Yeah, but I'm ready whenever you're ready.
All right, I'll call you right after
I'm
the
ready.
show.
I'm ready to go. I want you to help me set up a GoFundMe fund so I can get a plane ticket and get to the United States and get this story out. Okay?
We'll start a GoFundMe so you can get over to, well, your story's getting out when we do the show. Don't worry, buddy. But we can get you to MSNBC in Atlanta or New York, wherever you got to go, all right?
Thank you.
And we'll do it on the show. All right. I'll get a sponsor for the ticket. All right, John.
I want to say something, though, to Cooper Charisse.
Yes.
Charisse, I really appreciate what you seem to be doing. You are actually doing the research. And you said, wow, it's all in Google. Well, Charisse, that's where we've been doing our research over the years.
And
it's
YouTube.
All YouTube, Google, it's all there. It tells you the whole story, the pros and cons. What I've read into the public domain, Charisse, you could find simply with the click of a button. My Bahamian people, my friends, my colleagues, listen, just Google it. Just Google it. This is that serious.
And if you just want to watch, go in YouTube and say, in YouTube, the little magnifying glass, is WTO good for small countries? And watch the 100 videos. And if you see one that says it's super duper duper, please send it to us. Put it right
In fact,
here.
you will not find any videos which talk about the WTO being good for small developing countries. Let me say it so that, again, the new Minister for Foreign Trade could hear this. You will not find any videos on YouTube which speak to the WTO being good for small developing countries.
In fact,
I invite Mr. Lang to disagree with me.
I'll put up some that show you a dozen, but read this one from Munnings in Andros,
I'm an Androsian.
commenting on what we just said.
Right. I'm an Androsian, and many of the citizens only live from the sea.
That bill
That bill, speaking, I guess, the WTO will crush the whole
fishing industry.
Whole fishing industry. So there you go.
Isn't that amazing?
You
have an Androsian who knows about fishing telling you. I'm going to pull up the whole thing. There's not much more I could say. I mean...
And Karen Munnings, we appreciate your interest too. The interest is there. We want the Bahamian people to continue to read and to do their research so that when the time comes, and it's not too long now, ladies and gentlemen, when they tell you and they announce to the world that we are now members of the WTO, the next thing you hear is that businesses upon businesses are coming in and we have no control of it. You'll know why.
And then you'll wonder why you have no say in theirs if you want to read the
I'm an Androsian. Many of the citizens only live from the sea. This bill will crush the whole fishing industries for the citizens of this country. It is fair to say they're governing without any common sense solutions. I'm not in the fishing industries, but my heart is in pain for these folks, knowing that what is installed for them in the near future.
And so they're going to tell us that it's a bunch of scare tactics, Fane. You guys are trying to scare people not to do this because you have special interests. What special interest does a small business in this country have? What special interest does you don't even have the business?
No, I don't have any small. So I don't have any interest like that.
You have no business.
No.
And you see that someone can come and take a business that you possibly may have gone into. Well, you could partner with them. Really? Listen, why don't we dollarize? Remove the exchange control. Let's have that talk quick. Remove all exchange control so this man here can go into a new bone fishing lodge. He owns the land. They can't come and take the fish.
I expect absolutely nothing.
There's an alternative to this.
I expect absolutely nothing from certain politicians in this country. You know what I am concerned about? I am concerned that the Prime Minister, who's a decent person, is being properly advised. You see, some people are only securing the future for themselves and their children for the next 50 to 100 years. You see, there have been a long oligarchical family, dominant family in this country, and they want to continue the status quo. That is what this is about. I have no desire for any of them. I don't expect them to respond positively.
Munnings, she says there's no video she's found that says WTO is good for the small developing country.
Well, I said that, didn't I? I said that.
She's verifying it.
Thank you very much.
He had a riot over gas hikes.
So he had a riot over gas hikes. There you go.
So what's going to happen here when people realize realize what's been done to them. So, Fane, you know what? Anything you want to do in closing?
No, I'd like to say thank you for the time, Graham, to come in and have this chat with the Bahamian people. I think that it's a timely thing. I wish you well. I wish you well with this platform. If it goes on to develop, I wish you well with this platform. It really is going to be up to the Bahamian people. But let me say this:
it's been needed.
Tira Bethel, Aaron Victor, Kira Munnings, and so forth. I see these names. These are some new names
From Freeport.
From Freeport. Please understand that it's time to raise in a very responsible way. Raise hell.
We already don't own the airport, you know, in Freeport. So it's already been taken. Look at the big resorts that are there. Look at Disney. You're doing it. You have a big company coming in the southern part of Eleuthera. Bam.
It's been a pleasure.
Guys, if you like the show, please share it.
Yes.
We're gonna implement all forms of technology up. You're gonna have Windows Live, so people in Freeport, people in Bimini, people in Baltimore, people in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, you're gonna be up in the corner, just like CNN. We want it to look exactly and perform. We want to show that the Bahamas is world class. Just like if an American can do it, we don't need an American or a Canadian or a Peruvian or whoever to come here and do anything. You're looking at technology working the same as it does in the U.S. We're going to give out, it's a toll-free number if you're on a live. You can call us if you want to do the old technology. We're going to probably get a fax machine here so you can bang on it and you can fax your MP. Listen, don't fax your MP. Use a tablet or a phone and email them. But in all seriousness, this is going to be different where you actually understand what's happening to you. Instead of a show that just lets people cry about a problem, let's fix the problem and let's fix the Bahamas.